If there's artistry in a broom, then consider the possibility that you have an art gallery in your own home. Not necessarily in your broom closet, but right there on the comics page of your newspaper and on your TV, DVDs, and computer screen, where cartoons, once restricted to Saturday mornings, are now enjoyed at all times. Comics and cartoons are art forms, often overlooked because they are so common, but Tim Oliphant celebrates them and creates them.
Saturday mornings, and that crazy rabbit, forever remembered for wondering, "What's up, Doc?" never knew when he was asking, he was also inspiring.
Back when I was growing up too, that was when the Saturday morning cartoons were around, all the way from like 6 in the morning till noon was cartoon after cartoon. Mostly Hanna-Barbera stuff, but I remember there was like 2 hours of the Bugs Bunny cartoons. And I wouldn't crack a smile through any of it. Call yourself a mouse. I would look at those cartoons over and over and over and over. And it's like my mind is analyzing everything, and that's how I would learn to draw stuff, For what I've done here first is kind of rough this out.
30 years later, Tim Oliphant doesn't need Bugs or Daffy Duck to put cartoons in his head. He just needs pencil and paper. In his world where characters come to life through his drawings, he is Mr. Ollie, a full-time cartoonist.
In 5th grade, like all kids, I doodled on notebook paper, Army tanks, race cars, stuff like that, but never really had a big thing about drawing. There was this art class once a week, and not much of one, just a little art to get kind of initiated a little bit into what art was. Pretty much, I just wanted to get out of class, and so I signed up for art class.
Hardly the path of Picasso, but Tim's artistic inspiration never derived from the classical greats.
And my real awakening, I guess, is when I discovered Mad Magazine, which at that time was quite a subversive publication. I always like to tell people that Mad Magazine taught me how to draw, because I would copy all the great artists of that time that was in Mad Magazine, from their caricatures to their serious artwork to their cartoony stuff, and then I'd just fill up my sketchbooks and any chance I had to draw.
And draw he did, traveling along the unconventional avenue of art, where funny comes first. It's a world with no rules, so his people, his animals, and everything he sees avoids the real world for a cartoony one. His studio reflects his sensibilities. Tim's surrounded by his creations, pop culture's best-known characters. All of this may not rise to the lofty level of museum art, but he knows, thanks to an old friend and mentor, how cartoons can connect with the masses.
Now, Charles Schulz, who created Peanuts, used to refer to the comics as a sidewalk medium, and that's because cartoons appeal to everybody. And because they were in newspapers or magazines, they were so accessible to everybody.
Schulz was the master of turning simple into significant. Laughter and life lessons are what his daily comics delivered.
Every time Charlie Brown gets turned down by the little redheaded girl, he wants to say something to her, but chickens out. I mean, how many of us have gone through that, or how many of us have had a sister like Lucy? You can say things in a humorous way to make your point that maybe you couldn't if you were serious. A lot of times in cartoons, you'll see wrinkles like this. Now, to make the ripples...
Now Mr. Ollie carries his cartoons into the classroom, where all of the funny business is left out of his lectures. The serious side of making art still matters in cartoons.
I want them to understand, or I want them to show them what all is involved in cartooning, that it is an art form, just like painting or watercolor or portraits or landscapes or still lifes. It is an art form, and I want them to understand that.
His students need to know that while the picture may look funny and silly, it's wise to plant substance under the surface. Drawing tips come with the class, too.
We've been learning how to, this perspective, and the things in the back will look smaller and the things in the front will look bigger, and how to make the same person or animal except with their head turned a different way. by drawing lines in their face and knowing the nose is on this part of the line and then rotating it.
His teaching goes beyond just pencil and paper precision. Creative thinking, geometry, and science are all part of creating a cartoon.
Sometimes I'll draw water, for instance, and I'll talk about it how it's not always blue, you know, because they seem to think every time they do a picture, water is always blue. Well, you know, most of them, when I ask them, they'll tell me it's clear. And then we talk about, well, why does it have that color?
Tim also reminds his students that while giggles may come with comics, it does not make this a lesser form of art.
I have had kids talk to me before that they'll have a certain art class where if they're caught doing cartoons, they get punished for it in some way. But I try to instill in them, and then they can tell others, that what we're doing in cartooning is the same thing they do in their art classes, as far as the fundamentals, the basics, the design. The difference is it's okay if the head's bigger than the body, because that's what makes it funny looking.
It's okay if the head is smaller or just funny looking, because in the cartoon community, creativity controls the direction of the drawing. As Dr. Seuss loved to say, you have brains in your head and feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose.
But I talk about Dr. Seuss a lot because he's such a good example of being creative. And the use of design he used, the colors, the way he drew the characters.
Which means let your imagination go wild and create a world where all is possible.
We were doing ducks on the board, so I just brought a duck and one of my favorite sports and put them together. So I just made a duck playing basketball.
Maybe it's a duck who can dunk, an image that would make Dr. Seuss smile, in a line of work where a smile is the biggest payoff of all.
As Tim continues drawing, he also continues to draw young students to the art of comics and cartoons. He is currently working on a series of illustrated note cards that he hopes to place in retail stores.